Deirdre Bair is here. She won the National Book Award for a biography of Samuel Beckett. Her latest subject is Carl Jung, one of the most controversial figures in the history of psychoanalysis. Bair is the first Jung biographer to interview his family. She also had unprecedented access to the documents, the diaries, and the letters of co-workers, patients, and his mistress. I am pleased to have her at this table, recommended by my good friend Bill Bradley. Welcome to the table.
Thank you.
Tell me why this. I mean, you've done a series of books of interesting people, whether it's Simone de Beauvoir, Beckett, Anais Nin, who else? Who am I missing?
That's it.
That's it. That's a life right there. Why Carl Jung?
You know, it was just one of those happy accidents, to use Jung's own words, synchronicity. All sorts of random things came together, and Jung's name was always being mentioned. People were saying he's someone about whom lots has been written, but nobody really knows anything about him.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, I said, gee, I mean, I know he's important, but tell me why, because my understanding of psychoanalysis is not very deep. So what is he revered for, and what was it, secondly, about him? Because there have been about 4 or 5 biographies written about him, as I remember.
Easily,
Okay.
Perhaps 6 or 8, or maybe
so
even more.
What makes him, what should we know about what he did that makes him worthy of our attention?
Well, he really was one of the 2 founders of psychoanalysis, Freud, of course, being the other one. Jung gave us a whole lot of terms that we don't even know came from him, but which are a part of our everyday vocabulary. There's the complex, there's the archetype, there's the introvert, the extrovert.
Right. Those are the 2 things I know about, introvert and extrovert, that he did.
Right. Personality types, the Myers-Briggs test that just about everybody takes when they go for a job interview was based on Jung's association test.
Now, what was that?
Well, the association test is very simple. If I say red, you say green. It's that kind of thing. And what Jung did was to say, uh-oh, this fellow is having a hard time responding to a certain word. That indicates that he's got a complex about this.
In other words, if he doesn't have an immediate association, then it means that there's a complex.
There's a
problem there.
There's a problem there, and we ought to look at that word further.
Now, what did he tell us about consciousness?
Consciousness, he talked about the fact that we have the consciousness that's our everyday going through life, moving and being about in the world. And he also told us that we have an unconscious. And it's when we don't listen to that unconscious, when we fail to heed what it's trying to tell us, that we get into real emotional trouble.
And how do we access that? Do we need a professional to do that?
In some instances, yes, but in other instances, if we listen to our dreams and we try to understand our dreams, Jung was very big, as was Freud, on dream analysis.
Yeah.
And if you listen to your dreams...
Because it was our subconscious at work.
The subconscious is at work. Often, if you have a problem that you can't solve during the day and you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning and say, oh, I've got the answer to that.
Now, see, who does that happen to? Because it doesn't happen to me.
Well, I'm with you pretty much on that. But a lot of people tell me that I just went to sleep on it and woke up and I had the answer.
Yeah. But it happens to all of us in a sense. It's somehow later. Once you begin to sort of think about something all the time, at some point, at a later, not because you say I need the answer now, but at some point it will just evolve, whether it's after sleep or at some other point.
Right.
What you I assume wrote this in part because you had access.
I did, but I have to clarify the kind of access that I had. The Jung heirs, it's called the Erbengemeinschaft Jung, which is the committee of his heirs.
It was a rich family in Switzerland, was it not?
Hugely rich. Jung's wife, Emma, was the 2nd richest woman in Switzerland. She was a great heiress, and he was no slouch when it came to making money either. He had a lot of very rich and powerful patients.
Right.
So they were very, very well off, and they have a lot of heirs. Jung had 5 children who each had 3 to 5 children who each had, and it goes on exponentially.
Right.
But they only control a limited number of papers, which are deposited in the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. But the way you get to read those papers is only after a member of the Jung family goes to read it first. And you have to know what you want to read, because if you don't tell them what you want to read, they're not going to volunteer and give it to you. So it was an awful lot of detective sleuthing on my part.
What shaped his life?
What shaped his life? I think probably the meeting with Freud was of paramount importance, because he knew before he met Freud that he wanted to be an analyst, a psychoanalyst. But after meeting Freud, he was really set solidly down that path in his career. And he really wanted to be a colleague. He wanted them to be two colleagues traveling down the same road, arguing, debating, finally coming to a synthesis that was the proper way to move forward. Freud wouldn't have that.
Yeah.
Freud said, in effect, very, very simplistically, my way or the highway. Freud said, I created psychoanalysis. It is mine, meaning it's either my way or nothing. And so Jung felt that, well, if he could not follow Freud entirely, he would have to create his own way of doing therapy. He would have to create his own vocabulary to talk about how he did therapy. So he was a man of tremendous integrity, even though not going along with Freud cost him dearly professionally.
And how did Freud come to appreciate Jung?
Oh, in the beginning, it was just, the coming together of two people who shared the same ideas, the same mindset. But also, there was something added here that is very important. Freud was afraid that psychoanalysis was going to be known as the Jewish science, that everybody who followed him in Vienna was Jewish. And Jung was Swiss, Christian, the son of a Protestant minister.
There's a picture.
Yeah, so Jung was just a terrific convert to Freud. The Zurich school, as opposed to the Vienna school, the Zurich school was very important in psychoanalysis, so Jung was a great catch for Freud.
What was Jung's relationship with his family? His wife?
His wife, very good, very loving, but at the same time he put her into a particular box of his own creation, a psychoanalytic box. She was to be the matron of the house, the mother of the children, the one who made his life easy. She was not to be the woman who satisfied his intellectual and sexual needs. Although she must have satisfied him sexually to some degree because they had 5 children together. But he had a mistress.
Toni Wolff.
Toni Wolff. And Toni Wolff was a brilliant young woman whose mind was as agile and interesting as his was, who shared almost all of his interests, who was a genuine colleague. And many of the people that I interviewed for the book told me that Toni Wolff had analyzed them. She became an analyst, and they said she was absolutely marvelous. She was so thorough. She saved their lives, all those wonderful things people say. But the interesting thing about her was that in this very tiny town of Zurich, where you can't ride a different tram than you usually do, or everybody in town knows about it, they managed to keep this relationship incredibly discreet, almost to the point that very few people knew that it existed.
Today, tell me the difference between what Freud tells us and what Jung tells us.
Well, Freud...
And in emphasis as well.
I really can't speak too intelligently about Freud, I don't think, but I'll just say that Freud insisted that the sexual drive, the libido, was at the heart of his psychology. Jung didn't believe that. Jung believed that there were other drives that were important as well. Jung said, Adler, for example, had the right idea when he said power was very influential. Jung said people yearn for shelter and food and all sorts of other things. So Jung said to limit psychoanalysis to one drive is not helpful to the patient. Jung said you have to look at the entire totality.
All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.